The old woman's hands trembled as she held tightly to the armrest of the wide first-class seat. "I said this seat is not for you," a sharply dressed man snapped, his voice loud enough for everyone on the plane to hear. People turned their heads. Some stared, some whispered, a few lifted their phones. The elderly woman, wrapped in a neat blue Ankara shawl, looked up slowly. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes were calm, steady, and full of quiet dignity. "My son," she said softly, "this is the seat on my ticket." The flight attendant glanced at the boarding pass in her hand, then at the angry passenger standing over her. "Ma'am," the attendant said, forcing a polite smile, "there seems to be some confusion. Perhaps you should move to economy while we sort this out." A murmur ran through the cabin. The man folded his arms. "Of course there's confusion. How can someone like her be sitting in first class?" The words hung in the air like a slap. The woman did not answer immediately. She simply tightened her fingers around the small leather handbag resting on her lap, the one that looked old enough to have seen many years and many journeys. Then slowly, she stood up. Her name was Mama Abena, and in the town of Afolabi Heights, just outside Lagos, everyone knew her as the woman who never raised her voice, no matter how badly life tested her. But no one on that plane knew who she really was. As she stepped into the aisle, the first-class passengers watched in silence. And just then, the cockpit door opened. The pilot stepped out. The moment his eyes fell on the old woman, his face changed. His mouth opened. The entire cabin went silent. And then he said words that made everyone freeze. "Who dared ask my mother to leave her seat?" Gasps spread across the cabin. The angry passenger's face lost its color. The flight attendant's hands shook. Mama Abena looked up at the pilot and tears filled her eyes. "Kojo," she whispered. But before anyone could say another word, let me tell you how this moment came to be. Only 2 days earlier, the streets of Afolabi Heights had been alive with the usual sounds of a modern African morning. Danfo buses honked, street vendors called out the prices of oranges and roasted corn, children in clean uniforms hurried towards school gates, motorbikes weaved through traffic, and in the middle of it all stood Mama Abena's small food stall near the bus stop. Every morning, she sold hot akara, soft bread, and sweet tea. Though her back had begun to bend with age, she still woke before sunrise every day. People in the neighborhood loved her, not only because her food was delicious, but because her kindness was famous. If a child had no money for breakfast, Mama Abena fed them anyway. If a worker was short on cash, she would smile and say, "Pay tomorrow." Some never did. Still, she never complained. Her only child, Kojo, had left home many years ago. He had been a bright, determined boy with big dreams. While other boys played football in dusty fields, Kojo would sit beneath the mango tree reading books about aeroplanes. One day, when he was just 10 years old, he had looked up at the sky and said, "Mama, one day I will fly one of those." Some people laughed. A poor widow's son becoming a pilot? Impossible, they said. But Mama Abena never laughed. She only placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "The sky does not ask where you come from." Those words stayed with Kojo. Years passed. Life was not easy. Mama Abena sold food from morning till night to pay for his schooling. There were nights she went to bed hungry so he could have textbooks. There were weeks she walked instead of taking the bus so she could save money for his exam fees. Sometimes when Kojo noticed her sacrifices, tears would gather in his eyes. "Mama, I can stop school and help you." But she would shake her head. "No, my son, a seed does not stop growing because the soil is hard." At last, Kojo earned a scholarship to study aviation abroad. The whole neighborhood celebrated. Even those who had once mocked them came to shake Mama Abena's hand. For years, Kojo sent letters, messages, and money home. Then came the wonderful news. He had become a pilot. Mama Abena cried tears of joy the day she heard. Yet what kept him far away? Months became years. Though they spoke often on the phone, they had not seen each other in a long time. Then, one bright afternoon, a black car pulled up beside Mama Abena's store. A young man in a crisp suit stepped out and handed her an envelope. "It's from Captain Kojo," he said with a smile. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a first-class plane ticket to Accra. A note lay beside it. "Mama, I am coming home soon, but first I want you to visit me. I want you to see the life your sacrifices built. For once, travel in comfort. You deserve the best." Tears rolled down her cheeks. The women at the stall gathered around her, clapping and laughing with joy. "You will fly in first class," one of them said. Mama Abena smiled shyly. She had never been on an aeroplane before. The whole neighborhood helped prepare her. Her neighbor, Auntie Sade, ironed her finest wrapper. A young tailor pressed her blouse. The children polished her shoes. On the morning of the trip, the entire street came out to wave goodbye. She carried only one small leather handbag and a heart full of pride. But not everyone was happy for her. Among the crowd stood Mr. Balogun, a wealthy businessman from the estate nearby. He often passed by Mama Abena's stall without greeting her. When he saw the ticket in her hand, his eyes narrowed. First class, he scoffed. Some people do not know their place. Mama Abena said nothing. She simply smiled and continued on her way. Hours later, she arrived at the airport, amazed by the bright lights, shiny floors, and bustling crowds. When she handed over her ticket, the attendant looked surprised but nodded respectfully. Soon she was seated in the front of the plane. For the first time in her life, Mama Abena leaned back in a soft leather seat. Her eyes filled with wonder. Then, just as the doors were about to close, a sharply dressed man entered the cabin. He stopped, his eyes locked on her, and his face twisted with anger. It was Mr. Balogun. His voice thundered through the cabin. "What is she doing in my section?" Mama Abena's fingers tightened around her bag, and as he stepped toward her seat, the entire cabin turned to watch. Mr. Balogun's polished shoes clicked sharply against the floor as he marched down the aisle. "What is she doing here?" he demanded again, pointing at Mama Abena as if she were a misplaced bag. The passengers fell silent. Mama Abena sat upright, her hands folded neatly over her small leather handbag. "This is my seat, sir," she said gently, holding out her ticket. Mr. Balogun barely looked at it. "That cannot be right," he snapped. "First class is for paying customers." A few people exchanged uncomfortable glances. One woman near the window frowned but said nothing. The flight attendant hurried over, her smile tight and nervous. "Sir, please lower your voice," she said softly. Mr. Balogun turned to her. "Then do your job. Move her." The attendant took Mama Abena's ticket and examined it carefully. Her eyes widened for a moment. Seat 2A. First class. The ticket was valid. Still, with Mr. Balogun glaring at her and several wealthy passengers watching, she hesitated. "Ma'am," she said to Mama Abena, "perhaps you could move to another seat while we sort this out." Mama Abena looked up at her. There was sadness in her eyes, but no anger. "My daughter, I am only sitting where my son placed me." The words were simple, yet they carried a weight the others did not understand. Mr. Balogun gave a short laugh. "Her son? And what kind of son buys first-class tickets?" The laughter from one or two passengers stung more than the words. Slowly, Mama Abena rose from her seat. The cabin seemed to hold its breath. Just then, the cockpit door opened. The pilot stepped out in full uniform, tall and calm, his cap tucked beneath one arm. At first, his expression was professional. Then his eyes landed on Mama Abena. Everything changed. His face softened. His lips parted in disbelief. "Mama?" The word came out almost as a whisper. Mama Abena turned. For a moment, she simply stared. Then her eyes filled with tears. "Kojo," she breathed. The pilot crossed the aisle in 2 quick steps and gently took her hands in his. The whole cabin was silent. Even Mr. Balogun seemed frozen. Kojo turned slowly to face the passengers. His voice, when he spoke, was calm but firm. "Who asked my mother to leave her seat?" No one answered. The flight attendant lowered her gaze. Mr. Balogun cleared his throat. "Captain, I only thought there had been a mistake." Kojo looked directly at him. There was no mistake. His words were measured, but every syllable landed like a stone. "She is seated exactly where she belongs." A murmur moved through the cabin. Some passengers looked embarrassed. Others stared at Mama Abena with new eyes. Kojo helped his mother back into her seat and knelt beside her. "I wanted to surprise you after takeoff," he said softly, smiling through misty eyes. "But I could not stay in the cockpit when I heard the commotion." Mama Abena touched his cheek. "You have grown into the sky, my son." A few passengers smiled at the warmth between them. But Kojo was not finished. He stood and faced the cabin again. "This woman," he said, gesturing to his mother, "woke up before dawn every day for 20 years so I could go to school. She sold akara by the roadside under rain and hot sun. She skipped meals so I could buy books. Everything I am began with her sacrifice." The silence deepened. Mr. Balogun's face reddened. Kojo continued, "Many people see clothes before they see character. They see age before they see wisdom. They see poverty before they see dignity. But my mother taught me that a person's worth is not measured by the seat they sit in." The words settled over the cabin. One of the passengers, a middle-aged woman in a business suit, began to clap. Then another joined. Soon the entire first-class section erupted in applause. Mama Abena lowered her eyes, overwhelmed. Mr. Balogun stood stiffly, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Kojo turned to the flight attendant. "Please ensure my mother is comfortable." "Yes, Captain," she said quickly, shame written across her face. Then, to everyone's surprise, Kojo turned back to Mr. Balogun. "Sir," he said, his tone respectful, "my mother taught me never to answer disrespect with disrespect. So I will say only this: kindness costs nothing." Mr. Balogun opened his mouth, then closed it again. For once, he had no words. The plane finally took off. As the city lights of Lagos grew smaller beneath the clouds, Mama Abena gazed out the window in wonder. She had dreamed of this moment for years. Beside her, the same businesswoman who had started the applause leaned over and smiled. "You must be very proud." Mama Abena nodded softly. "Yes, but more than proud, I am grateful." The flight was smooth and calm. Later, when Kojo returned briefly from the cockpit, he brought Mama Abena a warm meal and sat with her for a few minutes. They spoke of the old neighborhood, the children who used to buy akara, and the mango tree under which he once studied. For the first time in many years, Mama Abena felt the deep peace of seeing her hard work blossom. But while everyone seemed moved by the moment, Mr. Balogun sat quietly in his seat, staring ahead. Something restless stirred behind his eyes. Hours later, as the plane began its descent into Accra, Kojo made an announcement over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for flying with us today. Before we land, I would like to make a special announcement." The cabin went still again. Mama Abena looked up, surprised. Kojo's voice came through the speakers, warm and clear. "Today is not just another flight for me. Today, the woman who gave me my wings is on board. And when we land, there is something important I must tell her and all of you." Passengers looked at one another curiously. Even Mr. Balogun lifted his head. Mama Abena gripped her handbag tighter. Then the plane touched down, and as the doors opened, a line of uniformed officials and camera crews could be seen waiting outside. Mama Abena gripped her handbag. Something extraordinary was about to happen. The attendant's eyes filled with tears. As Mama Abena stepped out of the plane, flashes from cameras lit up the evening. The officials began to clap. Then the applause spread. Soon the whole arrival area was filled with the sound of hands clapping for the old woman in the blue Ankara shawl. Mama Abena froze. She had spent most of her life serving others from a roadside stall. Never, not even in her boldest dreams, had she imagined people gathering like this for her. Kojo guided her to a small platform near the gate where a banner hung above them. It read, "Honoring Mama Abena Mensah, the woman who gave wings to a dream." Mama Abena gasped. Tears welled in her eyes. Kojo took a microphone from one of the officials and turned to face the crowd. His voice carried clearly through the terminal. "Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to introduce you to the greatest person I know." He turned toward his mother. "This woman raised me alone after my father died when I was very young. She sold akara by the roadside from sunrise to nightfall. She walked miles to save transport money so I could stay in school. She believed in me when the world laughed. The crowd listened in silence. Even the passengers who had just disembarked stood nearby, watching. Kojo continued. When I was a little boy, I told her I wanted to fly planes. Many people said it was impossible. They said dreams like that were not for children from our street. He smiled softly. But my mother told me something I have never forgotten. He turned to her. Mama, please, tell them. Mama Abena looked shyly at the microphone. Then in her gentle voice, she said, "The sky does not ask where you come from." A hush fell over the terminal. Then came a loud burst of applause. Some people even wiped tears from their eyes. Kojo nodded. Those words carried me through every hard day, every exam, every lonely night abroad. Today, I stand here as Captain Kojo Mensah because of her. He reached into his pocket and brought out a small velvet box. The crowd gasped again. Inside was a shining gold pin in the shape of wings. Mama, he said, his voice breaking slightly, this is the highest civilian honor our airline gives to people who have made extraordinary contributions to the lives of our staff and community. He pinned the golden wings carefully onto her shawl. These wings belong to you. Mama Abena could no longer hold back her tears. The crowd clapped louder than before. At the back of the gathering stood Mr. Balogun. His face was no longer proud or angry. It was full of shame. Slowly, he stepped forward. The people parted for him. He stopped in front of Mama Abena and bowed his head. Mama Abena, he said quietly, I wronged you. The entire crowd went silent. He swallowed hard. I judged you by what I saw on the outside. I forgot that dignity does not wear expensive clothes. Please forgive me. Mama Abena looked at him for a long moment. Then she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. My son, pride can blind the eyes, but humility can open them again. Mr. Balogun nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I will never forget this day. Kojo watched the moment with quiet respect. Then one of the reporters stepped forward. Captain Mensah, what lesson do you hope people will take from this story? Kojo looked at the crowd, then at his mother. He spoke clearly. Never measure a person by appearance, age, or wealth. The person you dismiss today may be the very foundation of someone's greatness tomorrow. The words hung in the air. Many people nodded. Some passengers who had laughed earlier looked deeply embarrassed. One woman whispered to her friend, "We should have spoken up." As the ceremony ended, Mama Abena and Kojo walked together towards the exit. Outside, the city lights shimmered in the warm night. Cars moved along the roads and the distant sound of music drifted from nearby shops and homes. For a moment, Mama Abena stopped and looked up at the sky. A plane moved like a silver bird across the moonlit clouds. She smiled. Kojo, she said softly, you truly flew. Kojo took her hand. No, Mama, he replied. We flew. And so, in a modern African city where people often rushed past one another without seeing the heart beneath the surface, the story of Mama Abena became a lesson told in homes, schools, and offices. People spoke of the old woman forced out of first class, but more importantly, they remembered the truth that followed. Respect is not earned by money. Honor is not stitched into clothing. And greatness often begins in the quiet sacrifices of those the world overlooks.